want you to imagine with me that we're in church and the worship leader steps up to the mic and he or she says, "Let's worship." The blank white screen behind him now fills with words. Some of you are reading out of your hymn book. The guitar is strummed, the piano keys are gently played, and we sing, "How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? Wake up, O Lord. Why are you sleeping? Arise, do not reject us forever. Why do you hide your face and forget our misery and oppression?" We don't sing songs like that, do we? But I wonder, if we're honest, how many of us have asked the Lord, "Where are you? Do you even hear my cries? Do you care? Why aren't you intervening here?" These are real questions that we have, that David had. And I think, truth be told, we're all dying for a little more honesty in the church with one another. We want it, but hey, I'm not gonna go first. That's too scary, too vulnerable, too risky. Well, friends, David goes first because you see, these prayers, these songs that he wrote down in so many of the Psalms, they aren't from his private journal. They weren't found tucked under his bed, under layers of dirt, a hidden treasure now made public in our Bibles. No, David wrote these Psalms for the congregation, to other believers to say and to sing. Think about that a minute. Think about your gut honest prayers and questions put up on the white screen behind the worship leader. Would you do it? In Psalm 40, and in most every psalm, we see a heart laid bare, vulnerable and honest, confident and confused, but always trusting in God. This is the psalm we are studying over the next 7 weeks, and it's a psalm that teaches us how to be honest and to navigate the undercurrent of pain and praise that flows throughout all of life. It's a psalm that reminds us of the gospel, of the redemption rhythm of God for his people, those he loves, those he comes to rescue. Psalm 40 is a call to remember the goodness and faithfulness of God. It is a telling of God, and it is a prayer to God. It communicates ultimate deliverance through Christ and a deliverance needed when we find ourselves in a pit and needing a new song. It's a psalm for the sad and the satisfied, the heartbroken and the hopeful, the faithful and the faltering. This psalm has been a lifeline to me, tethering me to my story and reminding me of who God is and what he does. I love this psalm, and I think you will too. This week, we are going to get into the dirt of Psalm 40. And yes, I do mean to use the word dirt, which I do not think is a bad word. I know some of us hear dirt and we think dirty, and that doesn't sound good. But here's the thing about dirt. Dirt is earthy, and it's foundational, and it births life. It birthed us as God breathed into it, creating us and gently forming us from dust into daughter. There's something about dirt, the place of formation, where even in the mess, God does something new. My hope is that as we interact with Psalm 40, we will find newness in the places we thought were dead or dying, hopeless or abandoned. The other thing about dirt, it's tangible. We can touch it and smell it. We can hold it and see it. I had a friend who told me once that when we can write words that are up in the air, so to speak, that we can't grasp. Words like love and hope and peace. These are words that need dirt on them to make sense of them. She said, we want to pull our words down into the dirt, where they can be felt and seen and smelled. I could try and explain love to you by saying it feels good and it's an action and I like it. Or I could say, love is when you bring your baby home from the hospital and she cries all night and you are exhausted and on the verge of a meltdown. And then she smiles and you smell her head and you kiss her soft cheeks and you know, this is love. David writes his words in the dirt for us. And so we're gonna dig our hands in and see what we can find. We're gonna remember that David was a real person with real prayers and questions and pain, and that he shares the honesty of it with other believers. We'll sit with him in the pit because we've been there too. And we'll cry with him as he cries out to God because, well, we know that guttural expression too. We'll wait and we'll watch and we'll feel the rock under our feet and we'll sing the new song echoing his praise and we'll tell of what God has done. For those of you who are watching and saying, that's all great, but what are we actually doing to get into this so-called dirt you speak of? Good question. We are going to study the whole of Psalm 40 inductively this week, meaning we are going to reason it out carefully and honestly as we observe the text, the prayer and song of a real person, and look for the meaning and intention of the author, what he can teach us, and how it relates to us and applies to our lives. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that what we're doing every week? Yes, but also no. This week is a study on the whole psalm, and every week after this, we'll study the themes found in the psalm. It will all make sense. At the end of this first week, you will be familiar with Psalm 40. Now, before we begin, let's look quickly at two verses that will guide us as we enter the scriptures, the story of God and his people. The first one that we're going to look at is Luke 24:45. Now, this is Jesus talking to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. It says this, "Then he opened their mind to understand the scriptures." Okay, now let's look at Psalm 119:18. It says this, "Open my eyes that I may behold wondrous things out of your law." My prayer for us as we begin this study is that God would open our minds to understand what he has for us in the scriptures and that we would behold wondrous things in it. Okay, let's get to it.